His pride arrived at its height when, having ascended for the first time the 11,000 stairs of his tower, he cast his eyes below, and beheld men not larger than pismires, mountains than shells, and cities than beehives. The idea which such an elevation inspired of his own grandeur completely bewildered him. He was almost ready to adore himself, till, lifting his eyes upward, he saw the stars as high above him as they appeared when he stood on the surface of the earth. He consoled himself, however, for this transient perception of his littleness with the thought of being great in the eyes of others, and flattered himself that the light of his mind would extend beyond the reach of his sight, and transfer to the stars the decrees of his destiny. With this view, the inquisitive prince passed most of his nights on the summit of his tower, till he became an adept in the mysteries of astrology, and imagined that the planets had disclosed to him the most marvelous adventures, which were to be accomplished by an extraordinary personage from a country altogether unknown. Prompted by motives of curiosity, he had always been courteous to strangers, but from this instant he redoubled his attention, and ordered it to be announced by sound of trumpet through all the streets of Samara, that no one of his subjects, on peril of displeasure, should either lodge or detain a traveller, but forthwith bring him to the palace. Not long after this proclamation there arrived in his metropolis a man so hideous that the very guards who arrested him were forced to shut their eyes as they led him along. The Caliph himself appeared startled at so horrible a visage, but joy succeeded to this emotion of terror when the stranger displayed to his view such rarities as he had never before seen, and of which he had no conception. In reality, nothing was ever so extraordinary as the merchandise this stranger produced. Most of his curiosities, which were not less admired for their workmanship than splendor, had, besides their several virtues, described on a parchment fastened to each. There were slippers which enabled the feet to walk, knives that out without the motion of a hand, sabers which dealt the blow at the person they were wished to strike, and the whole enriched with gems that were hitherto unknown. The sabers, whose blades emitted a dazzling radiance, fixed more than all the Caliph's attention, who promised himself to decipher at his leisure the uncouth characters engraven on their sides. Without, therefore, demanding their price, he ordered all the coined gold to be brought from his treasury, and commanded the merchant to take what he pleased. The stranger complied with modesty and silence. Vathek imagined that the merchant's taciturnity was occasioned by the awe which his presence inspired, encouraged him to advance, and asked him, with an air of condescension, who he was, whence he came, and where he obtained such beautiful commodities. The man, or rather monster, instead of making a reply, thrice rubbed his forehead, which as well as his body was blacker than ebony. 4 times clapped his paunch, the projection of which was enormous, opened wide his huge eyes, which glowed like firebrands, began to laugh with a hideous noise, and discovered his long and sorry, some fool on a motorbike riding by. Um, they need to tune their engine. Um, began to laugh with a hideous noise and discovered his long amber-colored teeth, bestreaked with green. The Caliph, though a little startled, renewed his inquiries, but without being able to procure a reply, at which, beginning to be ruffled, he exclaimed, "Knowest thou, varlet, who I am, and at whom thou art aiming thy gibes?" Then, addressing his guards, "Have ye heard him speak? Is he dumb?" "He hath spoken," they replied, "though but little." "Let him speak again, then," said Vathek, "and tell me who he is, from whence he came, and where he procured these singular curiosities, or I swear by the ass of Balaam that I will make him rue his pertinacity." The menace was accompanied by the Caliph with one of his angry and perilous glances, which the stranger sustained without the slightest emotion, although his eyes were fixed on the terrible eye of the prince. No words can describe the amazement of the courtiers when they beheld the rude merchant withstand the encounter unshocked. They all fell prostrate with their faces on the ground to avoid the risk of their lives, and continued in the same abject posture till the Caliph exclaimed in a furious tone, "Up, cowards! Seize the miscreant! See that he be committed to prison and guarded by the best of my soldiers. Let him, however, retain the money I gave him. It is not my intent to take from him his property. I only want him to speak."